on today's episode of Life Embodied.
I find this platonic touch, when it's in a group, creates this sense of community more than I've felt in other spaces, where it's like you really get this sense of togetherness. Mm-hmm. And we are living in a society that is hypersexed, and everything is sex, and everybody's trying to make themselves look sexy and change their bodies to look like the ideal partner or the sexual ideal of the person is supposed to look like. And for me, this like just coming and being together in touch and dropping all of that is like a sort of counter movement against the hypersexualization of our society. Mm-hmm. There's so much in lying together with a group of people after you've danced a lot and you're quite tired, and you just lie there and just be together, like, you know, how like puppies fall asleep, or how like dogs fall asleep together, or like other mammals group together to rest, and it's very natural. And so these group restings I find for myself really pleasurable in the sensual nature of removing the sexuality. And I think it's so important for us as humans to not see every single touch as a potential romantic sexual encounter, but like an understanding that this touch itself is really, really important for us, because we are tactile, touch-based humans who have been removed from that superpower that we have.
Welcome to Life Embodied, where we explore how an embodiment practice can support us in meeting the challenges of life. How can we surf the waves of life deeply anchored in the safety of our bodies? How can we learn to trust our capacity to be with intense sensations and emotions? How can we cultivate body awareness, and why does it matter? Episodes include interviews with experts and practitioners that bring their knowledge and passion and share practical tips for your everyday life. I am your host, Katharina Alf. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the conversation. Welcome everybody to today's episode. My guest today is Hugh Stanier, a contemporary dancer, movement educator, and bodyworker with over 20 years of experience. He began his dance journey at 15, training in breakdancing and contemporary styles before graduating from the Northern School of Contemporary Dance in 2008. Throughout his career, Hugh has worked with renowned dance companies such as Two Face Dance, Tom Dales, Dan Won't Dance, and Wim van de Kabus at Ultima Ves. After 10 years of performing, he shifted his focus on the practice and facilitation of contact improvisation. Hugh's teaching experience is extensive and global. He enjoys combining a very physical movement practice with presence, awareness, and breath, and integrates Tai Chi movements for well-being into his teaching. Currently, Hugh is engaged in organizing his own events and workshops across Europe and beyond. Welcome, Hugh.
Hello, thank you. It's weird to have your biog read back at you, isn't it? Oh, I do that. I have done that, yes, and I do those things.
Yeah. Did you feel like was it accurate enough? Or would you like to add something?
Yeah, it's completely. I don't think I have anything to add. I think you just
cool.
You continue to just talk about me, and I'll agree, and then I don't have to sound good.
So I have the pleasure today of interviewing a friend, because you and I share a friendship, and I love to interview friends because you would think you know your friends, but then when you interview them, you find out all kinds of stuff you didn't know before. And that's just great. So I'm looking forward to that. There is a first question that I ask everybody on the podcast. So I'm going to ask you.
Great.
The question is, what is it like being your body?
Great. That's sorry. Doesn't have to think much about that. It's great being my body. I'm very happy being my body. Should I elaborate slightly, or just so we go great? Well, we'll do this in one word answers. It's going to be a short interview. It is good and nice. Yeah, I feel very lucky that I'm able to answer that question with the word great, because I've invested a
Mm.
lot of time in that answer. Which is why it feels
Mm.
great to be in my body, because I've spent a lot of time, yeah, like on it, listening to it, being with it, and discovering the things it can do. And I guess it's the thing that, well, I guess it's obviously the thing that most interested me since I was a teenager, and to go and explore it professionally. And maybe a few years ago, that question, the answer to that question would have been a lot different, because I had a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort and a lot of feeling that my body's not good enough. But like, all of my contact work and all of the somatic embodiment stuff has led me to a place where I feel very at home in this body, and it can do lots of wonderful things, but I also know how to let it rest and give it space and time when it's a bit tired of doing all those wonderful things and needs some spaciousness and deep rest to recover from all of the wonderful things. And now I have a good balance of that. My body is very happy with the physical things I'm able to do, and the fact that it gets listened to, in terms of, that was great, can we lie down now, please? That's a longer answer to the word great.
Thank you. Yeah. So speaks of your experience living in that body, or
Yeah.
being your body.
Yeah.
I can hear that there have been other times when and
The before
the
times with
friendship
the bad
wasn't.
bad.
Yeah, exactly. When the friendship wasn't that deep yet, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I the questions I want to ask you are kind of a bit of a in the order of events, kind
Mm-hmm.
of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I obviously really want to talk a lot about contact, because I know it's your
Mm.
passion and I'm
Yeah,
really
me
interested in
too.
it.
I want to talk a lot about contact as well.
Is it okay if we talk a little bit about performance before?
Yes. It's great,
Yeah?
actually. I just had a dream a couple of, maybe last week or a few days ago, where I dreamt I was performing, and I woke up like, man, I really miss performing. So I know at this point in my life, it's something I want to work towards doing again in the not so distant future. I'd like to perform again soon. So maybe talking about it and its relevance in my life might sort of manifest in the universal things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you wanting to go back or do
Mm.
it again. So, yeah, what did you get out of performing, like being a performing dancer, and maybe also
Mm.
what did you not get? What was missing?
Mm. Yes. What did I get? I started performing pretty early. Like I did quite a lot of performing before I'd even gone to like professional dance training. So I went to dance school when I was 18 at university age, but I started breakdancing when I was like 14. And through that breakdancing, I went to some classes that were run by a contemporary dancer, Tamsin Fitzgerald, who then runs Two-Faced Dance. She put together a youth dance company, but specifically a boys' youth dance company. We were called Two-Faced Youth. And so she taught us some basic contemporary dance as well as the breaking we were doing in the evenings. And then we started to create short shows. And then we went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is a huge international performance festival in Edinburgh in Scotland. And that I went when I was 17. And that totally changed my world, because we went there for 2 weeks. And we performed every day for 2 weeks. And within 5 days, we had sellout audiences. And it's quite hard to sell out a show in Edinburgh. So we did that, and this experience of like people just turning up to watch you, to be like, we've heard you're great, we're coming to see, and like the rapture in the room, and knowing that there's like 150, 200 people just for an hour, just like, this is interesting, I'm engaged in this, and it's you, is quite fantastic. And I just I guess it's quite addictive, the feeling of people paying attention to you. But there's also something in, like, you work really, really hard at something to get good at it, to become really, really good at it. And it's something that other people like to watch. And there's something in that exchange that's more than just showing off. And I think that's important about performing. And maybe I've got to come to a sort of maybe a negative viewpoint later in life of that performance is just about showing off. But I don't think it is really. I think it's about the vulnerability of presenting yourself as you are to be seen and turning up in a space where you know everybody's looking at you and being like, look at me, this is me. And the vulnerability, the authenticity, and the presence that it demands of you. So I think all of the positive things that I took from performing about really showing up and allowing to be seen were obviously very important to me, because then I decided to commit to training further and becoming a professional. So that was the positive bits of performing. And what did you say also, that maybe the not so positive bits?
Yeah, or maybe what was missing for you?
What was missing, yeah. In the performing aspect specifically, because I've got a lot of opinions about contemporary dance and contemporary dance training and how the negative effects of that, but maybe that's another point. But the things that can be missing from performing it's the beauty is also its ephemeral nature, is that it's like, you do it and it's done and it's gone. So that's wonderful, and it's also like not. It's also quite sort of tragically beautiful. Is like, once it's gone, and it's like, you've given your heart and soul and poured it out into the stage, and you've got and then everybody naps off and goes home, and it's like, right, they're done. So there's sort of sometimes this sense of emptiness afterwards, and you do all of this for that, and then it's gone. So I guess the ephemeral nature, and I guess a bit later on, it just started to sometimes feel a bit empty. Also, if you're doing a performance where you're working for somebody where you're not so engaged in the project, or you don't enjoy the show so much, and you have to perform, and you're like, you're not like, your heart's not fully in it, and you are a bit doing it for the money because it's your job, and it can be a bit like, why am I doing this? So yeah, that's maybe the things that are a bit lacking or something.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. That on the one hand,
Yes.
like this vulnerability and really showing up and being seen, like that this is actually so beautiful.
Really.
But that then when you do it professionally, it becomes less and less about that somehow. Or it becomes, in my experience, it became more and more difficult to actually do that.
Yes.
Because
totally.
it was more of a service to someone else, right? Like someone else's fantasy or their creativity, and you were kind of doing a service for them, and instead of really trying to dig in and find out, and I found that many times there wasn't really the space for that process, and also somehow with the professional pressure, it was also it became way more difficult. I felt like before I trained professionally, I was a way better actress than afterwards.
Yeah, true. I had much more raw energy on stage before I went to dance school. That's what I can really agree with that. Like, I wasn't. I was technically awful. I got to dance school and couldn't do any of the technique classes. I was like, I thought I was a really good dancer. I'm rubbish at this plie tendu stuff. But because it was sort of untapped and uncontrolled, like what went on stage when I was 17, 18 was just like, and I was so in the belief of it that it was much more visceral and much more real. Not to say that things later after training wasn't. That's not true at all. But yeah, there's something in the energy of youth, right? The energy and the arrogance of youth.
Absolutely. So It's interesting when you talked about the vulnerability and the honesty of performing. I was immediately wondering, is that something you picked up on in Contact? Is that the bit that you love in both?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I just really like being vulnerable. I'm that oversharer when everybody meets and they're like, oh my God, why are you telling me this? You just introduced yourself. Why are you telling me about your depression of the last 5 years? I didn't ask. But I'm telling. Yes. And yeah, the invitation, I guess there's that similarity. And obviously with Contact, there's that invitation to do that really in space with a group where everybody's involved in both the moving and the seeing, the witnessing and the moving are together in the space. And it, yeah, a well-held space, there's not all of these spaces are, or is a place where you can really be as you are in your vulnerability and move as you without judgment, with a bit less pressure from the audience's eyes, perhaps.
Yeah, they didn't pay.
Well,
they didn't pay to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, but if we stay chronologically, like when did you discover Contact?
Oh, I discovered Contact when I found myself in India in 2014.
Oh, what a cliche!
No, actually, I know, right? Well, move away from the cliche, but I did go to India. I actually went to India to not dance, which is quite funny, because I was approaching a burnout, basically. Like, I got really disillusioned with my job, and of what you were just talking about just before about being very far from that sort of connecting to the performance energy or connecting to your reasons for doing it. I'd really got to a place where I was like, I'm not going to dance if nobody's paying me, which actually wasn't a very healthy place to be. I remember saying that. I remember saying that in conversations. Like, I'm not dancing if nobody's actually like paying me to dance. Like, man, this is not why you started this. And so it was a bit after that time I decided to take some time out, and a friend of mine that I'd worked with in an amazing show with Stanway Dance, actually, we did a show called Babel, and stayed friends with this guy Nathaniel, and he'd been to Goa the year before, and he invited me to go. I sort of told him how I was, and he was like, you need to come here and meet these creative people. So I met Contact Improvisation as the world of Contact Improvisation there on the second day I got to Goa, because Nathaniel was teaching one class on what was the Goa Contact Festival, and they have an open jam, and he was like, should we all go along? So it was 3 of us were there, and we went along to this open jam, and there I met Vega Lukanen, who is my long-term collaborator. We've now been teaching and working together for 10 years, and I met her in this jam. She actually met me in the jam. She saw me dancing and was like, right, I want to dance with him. And I was dancing with Nathaniel, and she basically came over, and I remember starting with her coming in and like making this duet, a trio. And at some point she just pushed Nathaniel away with a sort of fuck off kind of vibe. I was like, oh, okay, so we're dancing together now. And we just like this merging of one of those magical Contact improvisation duets that people talk about when time disappears and you step into a pure flow state, and they just suddenly dance this magic with this person. I was like, whoa, okay. And it relit my passion for moving and for dancing, and like this dance came through me, which was very, very strong. And like, you don't want to stop moving, because at this time I was like, maybe I stop dance altogether and I find a different thing to do. And this is going to India and finding Contact at that time really kept me in the dance world. But that was meeting the Contact improvisation world as it is with the jamming and the sort of purely Contact space. But I actually met Contact when I was a teenager. So I was very lucky that my school had a really good dance department. And our dance teacher, Cassie Day, she had like extra funding to bring in choreographers and companies. And this duet company came in and they taught contact improvisation for like 2 days to us as teenagers. I'd totally forgotten about this workshop until like a couple of years ago. I was like, oh yeah, we did like a pure contact workshop. And it just deleted from my memory, and then it hopped back in a couple of years ago. So I met contact just as I was getting into breaking. And then we always used contact in our youth dance because Tamsin was massively into Strictly Come Dancing, which is the ballroom dancing thing on British television.
Oh, okay.
And so she'd come in like on rehearsal evenings and be like, I saw this lift on Strictly, we're going to do it, but with the flip. Like, can you do that? And then flip out of it, because we were very bouncy and we like going upside down and flipping around. So it's like, we learn the lift and they'd be like, yeah, but then you can do this. So that was our contact. It wasn't strictly contact improvisation, but we were in contact a lot. And then also in dance school at NUSCUDU, as I call it, which is the acronym, Northern School of Contemporary Dance. We had contact like once a week. We didn't have contact very much, and it was kind of frowned upon. But I loved it. It was very natural for me. It's always been very natural for me to be in touch with people. I'm very touchy, and I'm always massaging people, and so I just love rolling around with people. And yeah, contact's just always been around me in various different forms. Like me and my brother used to play it all the time. We used to throw each other around the garden, and we'd watch like video. He loved musicals at the time, so we'd like watch his favorite musical videos and then do the dances, and we'd do the lifts on the videos. So like contact was always part of my play. It was always how I had fun. Was artsy fartsy, rough and tumble, really, which is still what I do. I just now try and get people to pay me for it.
Yeah.
So that was that was the meeting contact and it weaving in and out of my life.
Mm-hmm. So could you tell a bit about like the background of contact or the history of contact for people that are not familiar with it and don't know about where it comes from?
So contact improvisation was sort of born as almost like a counterculture towards structured training contemporary dance. So it was quite an anarchistic movement, really, to sort of break down form and line and aesthetic into more experimenting collision. So the first sort of experiments into contact improvisation were. We're in America. I think we're in New York at the end of the 1960s. It's sort of like 69 to 72, 74 was sort of where it started taking form and taking shape. And it was, the sort of main initiators of contact were Steve Paxton and Nancy Stark-Smith, and also Nita Little and Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, and all these people have, gone on to do their own thing with contact as it's shaped, which is now a form that's been around for 50. Is this the 52nd year or so? Yeah, 52, 53 years.
Wow.
And the first they're all highly trained contemporary dancers, so they're all coming from with a lot of knowledge and training in their bodies already. So they're coming with a lot of form and information, highly informed bodies, and then they're breaking down the form and the structure. So a lot of the old contact videos, if you look at them, they look chaotic and it looks kind of dangerous. There's a lot of like flying towards each other. So one of the first performance pieces was called Magnesium, and it's bodies colliding in spaces. So people running at each other, jumping, hitting, and then literally testing the outcome. So it's like, what happens when we collide? How do we then arrange ourselves within the fall as we meet the ground together that we find support to one, not hurt each other, but also sort of ride the wave of momentum and force to see what the outcome is. So my perspective on contact is really that it's an ongoing, developing research form born of what happens if ... question mark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I love that about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's where to go with it. It's such a broad web. So
Yeah.
it's like it's opened so many possibilities, and it's gone so many different directions in the years that it's developed. And like, you can be very philosophical about the whole thing, and there's a lot of people sort of writing PhDs about how it sort of represents our sociological structures and how we interact as humans, and how like a contact jam space can be a microcosm of how we are with each other in society. And there's people that are going really deep into the somatic felt sense of what's going on internally, like your body-mind centering and your the BMC. And there's people who have got very energetic about it and have got very much into the sort of healing nature of touch and human connection, and how important it is that we are in touch, and what it does to be in platonic touch with not just one human, but a group of humans, and how powerful that is. So it's just gone so many different directions, and another route. People have gone into a more sensual, sexual exploration of the human body, coming into touch in that way, and inviting the eros and the sexual side as well. And that's gone to somewhere called touch and play, which is sort of bringing in the BDSM and kink world into all of that stuff. And there's avenues off all of it. And I think the wonderful thing, maybe people would disagree, I think the wonderful thing is that it's all contact, and it's all involving contact, it's all involving physical touch, and it's all about research and exploration. So in the fact, from the original form, it's got that root in it, no matter if you disagree or not. So I quite like the broad spectrum of that, but it also makes it very hard to define.
Where are you on this spectrum?
Well, where am I? That's a good question. Somewhere in the middle. I came to the form very specifically interested in the physicality and the improvisation. So yeah, coming from my breakdance background, and all of my contemporary dance stuff was always very highly physical. It's a lot of like flipping around, jumping a lot, like twisting spin tricks on the floor, and ways to sort of worm around on the floor very physically and with others. So then finding flow with that, finding that flow state, and meeting others in pure physicality, and just running with that, and being able to explore the realms of what you didn't even know was possible. That was my original interest when it like lit the fire, when I was there in Goa, and like, wow, I have to dance this every day. It was the simple physical exploration of the form itself. So I really came to it through specific physicality. And then over the last 10 years of developing my teaching practice and growing as a practitioner, as a human, and having some quite intense ups and downs, and starting to navigate those with contact, I've started to find more of an interest in it's hard to word this without sounding like a hippy-dippy woo-woo person. I really, the word healing is just a bit like, I'm here. But I don't know the better word for it. So the healing aspects of being in physical connection with other people, and in stillness and in slowness, and turning inwards into your interoception. So there's some opening to the somatic world, and inviting people through that, and inviting myself through it. So finding those through being a practitioner, I've really find a lot of healing and a lot of energy, or like positive flow and connection to life. That's what I want to say. Through these somatic realms, I find a real deep connection to life and being alive that makes me want to continue being alive. And so I invite people to do that in the spaces that I facilitate. Would you like to continue being alive? So I'm sort of somewhere in the middle of physicality and somatics, softness, connection to others through platonic touch.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely experienced this in your workshops. And since I experienced your workshops, I am very hesitant to go to someone else. I am spoiled now. You spoiled me. I was completely hesitant to do any contact before because I've tried it once as a teenager and was completely weirded out by grown-ups rubbing up against each other, and it all felt a bit like an excuse to rub up against each other. And so
it is really
that was my first encounter with contact. Yeah, exactly.
It's all about framing, and then it's like, oh no, I actually do want to rub up against other people because it's really good. It's just great. But it's clarity, framing of spaces and holding safe spaces, or holding clearly intentioned spaces for contact is for me what's key. And I've met many people who have had a first horrible experience with contact and like, oh no, I don't like contact, it's not for me because this happened and it was really unclear, and like somebody rubbed up against me weirdly and I didn't really get it. And like, that's because it's not been framed well. Which is hard to do because there's a lot going on in the space which can be potentially triggering. And whereas intimate stuff, it's really intimate. When you're coming to physical touch, it's always intimate. When you're touching, it's intimate. It's an intimate thing to do. And then when it's with people you don't know so well, it's like, well, why would I do this? And to bring...
Yeah, and I think also because everybody is just so touch deprived that when we finally go into a space where it is about touch and physical contact, everybody goes a bit nuts, or just has very unclear boundaries around it, or very mixed intentions, and like it's just complex, right? There's
absolutely, because we don't know how to navigate it at first. Yeah, like what are we doing in this space? How do I do it? Why do I want to touch? Why are we touch deprived?
And so when I went to your workshops, it really felt very, very different. Like it wasn't weird.
Why wasn't it weird? Can I ask you? Because I need to write down why it's not weird, basically.
I wanted to ask you why it's not.
Oh, right.
Well, I think one thing is that I went to beginners workshops. So they were really, we really started at the beginning. So it was very low key. Like I didn't feel like a beginner amongst skilled dancers that is the only one who doesn't know what to do. So that helped. And then we really tuned into all of these things step by step. Like that's how I would say it. Like it was really, first we would just place hands, and then we just would rock each other a little bit, and then we would lean on each other a little bit, and we would move together. And it was always clear what we were doing. It was always, now we do this, and now we do this. And then within the clarity of, this is what we're doing right now, I could drop into the experience and then really feel what is going on, what is happening in me, what does it do to me. Whereas in a jam, for example, I'm just overwhelmed with everything going on. Because it's not clear what's happening. And anything can happen at any given moment. And people might just jump onto me, not knowing that I'm never lifted. And, so I think the clarity of knowing, what are the rules right now of this encounter? Okay, we're both trying to roll. Great. Let's explore this. That's what made it really, really safe for me. And then in the end, we were actually improvising, but we built up to that as a group, as individuals, and so that's how I would describe it.
Yeah.
And what is your intention when teaching such a workshop, or what are your guidelines also to make it a safe space?
Yeah, for a lot of the stuff you said there is for me what's vital about creating a really clear space for getting to meet the form is explaining what it is and explaining what it is not. So making a very, I think I've already spoken about framing, but making a very clear frame of this is what we're doing in this space, this is what we're not doing in this space, and for me, I spoke about one of the avenues contact's gone into, which is the sexual realm, and for me that is not where contact is. So I very clearly like this realm we're exploring, coming into touch to explore movement research together, being in touch. This is a movement space, and where we're not going is there. Where we are going is into deep listening together, and into sensing, and explaining that contact from my approach, as I understand it, is a listening practice. So the first thing we're doing is slowing down enough to listen to the rhythms of our own body, and then from that place I can sense coming into connection with another person even before I'm in an actual physical touch, because I can feel that someone's there. And then when I am coming into physical touch, I'm being very, very still to listen to what happens when I come to that point of touch. So I'm framing space is making it very clear, very slow, and taking these baby steps of like coming to your own body, coming to moving with your own body and being aware of how it can move. Once you're moving in your own body and you've got a sense of improvising with your own body, then you come to the next step of meeting people in touch. When you come to that first step of meeting someone in touch, you remove the moving so that you just have time to be like, this is really a lot. Like, it's a lot. When you lean back to back with somebody, as an example, and you're just sitting there back to back and you breathe together, you don't know this person, it's like, wow, this is really intense, man. I can really feel their breath and their heat and like the expansion of their lungs, and there's loads of movement happening already, and there's loads of feelings of like, oh, am I doing it right? Am I going to be all right at this? Am I comfortable with this? Is this nice? And so one thing I also make clear in my space is that it's all optional. So if you want to be in touch, you can be in touch, but if you don't want to be in touch, you don't have to be. You can continue moving in your own space. So I frame spaces that you can always opt out. You can always end at any time. There's no obligation. And by having a space where there's no obligation, you don't have to do anything. You can find the things that you do want to do. And then obviously the next step is moving together. And that's usually close to the floor, like maybe just rolling or pushing into each other to stand up whilst leaning. And so that's the sort of first few bits of a workshop, and then offering some of the core principles of contact improvisation. And one of those is sharing weight. So it's being like having a shared center of weight by leaning into each other. And another one is rolling the point of contact. So once you come to shared weight, the point of contact can roll. And just simply offering those two principles, so that and doing all the stuff I just talked about, that can take 3 hours. That could take a day. I could do all of that. I could do all of that over a weekend with some space to play and how to move out in space. And people will leave very happy at the end of a weekend going, oh, I really feel like I can move with other people in space now. Because you've also got to open space for the unknown, and to allow the unknown to come safely in, it has to be known. It has to be like, these are the edges of the space. This is my perimeter. So within this place, I can let the unknown come in. So yeah, that clear frame lets you start to taste what improvisation is, what it is to move, what it is to be in touch with others. And then there's a lot of talking. So whenever you finish an exercise, I'll always have a part where you talk about how it was together. How was it? Things that came up, because it can bring up a lot of emotions. Like a lot of things move through your system when you're physically moving together with people. So there's space to talk about it, and then we talk in a group, and there's space to ask questions about what's going on. And yeah, that's the sort of framework of how the sort of space sound.
How you create the safe space, like, and with safe, I mean like that you feel it is actually okay and invited to opt out and to say no and to stop. And that's what I mean with safe, because obviously, like, shit happens, right? Like, you can't prevent that. And it is possibly even part of the practice to navigate that, right? I mean, because if we are in touch in real time, like in life, our perception isn't always as quick as events.
No, exactly. That's where one of the core things that we talk about in the practice is to move at the speed of your own awareness. But when you're in touch with another, you move at the speed of your combined awareness. So say that I'm in a really fast dance, and I'm really awake, and I'm in what I call my liquid body when I've been moving for hours, and I'm super hot, and I've just become this like fluid flow monster where I feel like I can physically do anything. And then I meet somebody who's just arrived at a jam space, and they're not in their flow, and they don't want to dance fast. And I meet them, but we're in touch, and they want to be in touch with me. It's my responsibility to listen to that person's body and go, we need to move at the speed of our combined awareness. And right now you're moving slow, and you've just got to this space, so you're not warm. And so that's where we go to. We get the combined awareness is slow and steady, so we can move safely together. So that principle, if it's respected and you really listen, it actually makes dances very, very safe.
Yeah.
It's just that people aren't always actually doing that. And that's where the injuries happen. But I would say, on the whole, contact spaces are some of the safest spaces. In terms of injuries, I've been much more injured in contemporary dance rehearsals when somebody thinks they're doing a lift that and you've rehearsed, and you're not quite in the right place. And they go for it, but you're not quite ready for it, and they fucking yank your arm out of your shoulder because, we were doing and there's like lack of communication, and there's assumptions. So in terms of injury risk, although sometimes contact spaces look from the outer, especially when you're seeing very, very high level practitioners like really fucking going for it, and it's like they're flying around each other. The risk of injury there is a lot lower than in other spaces I've seen, because because with that high level of physicality is an incredibly increased level of attention and awareness, because you've spent a long time in connection together, getting to that space, so you're there together, which I find fascinating as well. This sort of like morphogenic field where you're really buzzing in the similar frequencies.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this combined awareness. I mean, that I'm also into like the body to body practices, but more like the rough and tumble end of it. And I feel like it's so similar. Like it's really this. When people start out doing rough and tumble play, usually they go way too fast and way too hard, and you can spot a competent player by them going very slow, actually, and like not using a lot of force usually. I mean, obviously, like eventually play can go there, but it's not where you start out. And it's really what you described. Like if I meet someone in movement, we need to have a shared awareness. Because otherwise, and not even like it doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to get injured, but someone will not enjoy it.
Yeah. And the main thing is
Yeah.
that you're there to play together.
Exactly.
Like
It
the
should be
nature of
enjoyable.
it is that it's enjoyable. We've come here to enjoy this.
Yeah. And I think this is also what I found to be so intense also in contact workshops. Is like there's so much feedback all the time. Like I feel like it brings up all the interpersonal stuff you're dealing with. Like I specifically remember this one moment in one of your workshops where we were improvising a little bit with the whole group. Like I think it was the first time we started to merge the couples that had been working into a group. And I was suddenly sitting there alone, not in touch with anybody. And I remember this rush of anxiety of like, I'm not part anymore. Nobody wants to play with me. Like they took the first opportunity to get away from me.
Yeah.
And then I just, because it was so slow, I could be like, well, look at that. And I could breathe and feel it. And then boop, suddenly someone was there again. And it was just a brief moment, but like it brings stuff up, right? Like it's not just me. It's not just me.
No. That's what's great about it, is that it brings all your shit up. Which is why it's like, it's not therapy, but it is therapeutic. I think that's the thing to say about contact. Is like I think sometimes people come to contact expecting it to be therapy. Be like, I want to go through process and I want to go through this, and it's like, I'm going to use this practice for that. It's like, well, it's not actually that. But then some things about it are incredibly therapeutic because it does bring up your triggers, and you do meet things like jealousy and the things about not being good enough, and like abandonment issues, like when somebody randomly leaves a dance and you very quickly take it personally. I still do, even though you say not to. It's like, oh, why? And it brings those things up and it helps you face them. And if you've worked on those things in a good therapeutic environment and you've got the tools to then implement it, it's like the contact space is a very good practice space. It's like, so I can practice the things I learn in this other therapeutic thing and then go, I can apply it here, which is like that sort of, like I say, the sort of microcosm of life. And I do find quite often that a jam space imitates things that happen in our social sphere quite often. And you get these sort of mini relationships. I got really philosophical about contact quite a few years ago, and when I was watching a jam, and like watching it like a whole romantic relationship, like a whole couple monogamous relationship unfold and end. So like the beginning where you're sort of flirting and getting to know each other, and then you find some confluence and some convergence, and you're like, oh, together here, and they find some rhythm and it works really well. And then it's like, then something shifts and changes in the dynamic of the relationship. And then it starts to fall apart and break apart, and then it ends and they leave and diverge from each other. And it was kind of like really, really beautiful. And it always happens on this little degree. And where did that come from? Anyway, art imitating life.
It brings stuff up.
It brings stuff up. Yeah, exactly.
I think this is another aspect I wanted to talk about, like how the observing is so much part of the practice, and we touched on this earlier. That a big difference to a dance performance is there is no audience, but that doesn't mean that no one is watching, because just being not engaging in the dance and watching is also being part of the improvisation, right?
Exactly. Yes. So it is said often in contact spaces, and I say it whenever I'm teaching or holding a space, that witnessing is half of the practice. And witnessing is watching with presence and awareness. Active witnessing is to be fully present in the space to what is happening, but without judgment. So often when we're watching, we're like, oh, wow, that was really good, or oh, that they're not very good, or oh, what's happening there? So witnessing is to open your perception and your awareness to the whole space and let it move through you. Just let yourself see it without that inner commentary or letting it be quiet. And the thing is, I've talked about that a lot, but I've never actually implemented it in my own practice until a few years ago when I just didn't want to dance so much. And that was, I didn't want to dance for reasons of feeling quite sad for quite a long time, and I didn't have a desire to dance. And so I decided after a while to follow that and not dance, as opposed to making myself dance. So I did a lot more witnessing. And it opened to me then of like, this thing I've been saying is true. It is half the practice. It is literally half of the practice. Do it half the time. And I started to watch jams proper, like, to really witness and see them. And that's where I really start, like this sort of, I was just talking about seeing these relationships more clearly. That's where I started to, feel and be connected to what was going on more, and see how people dance it differently, and feel the importance that it is viewed by others, and that when we stop and take it in, we are as equally a part of the space, and how to bring that into your sense of being there, is that like I'm involved in this whole doing, in this group activity, as much as the people dancing. My presence here is just as important in this moment of stillness with my attention on this space. So that's it. I'm continuing to learn all the time from that, and just witness human interaction and be deeply moved by people dancing and allowing themselves to be seen in their movement. It's so beautiful to see someone who is just dancing, and they're aware, it's not dance like nobody's watching, because someone is watching, and that's wonderful, because you're supported in your dance by that, and you're supported being like, someone's giving me all of their presence right now, and I'm giving them all of my vulnerability to allow myself to be seen without changing how I am. And it's one of, I think it's such a beautiful thing about contact spaces, is this witnessing element, and glad that I'm learning all the time more about it.
Yeah. I'm just like one thing that really resonates is this aspect of belonging, even though you're kind of as if passive or outside. That I think for most of my life, until recently, thought that in order to feel like I belong, I need to be in the middle of it, or I need to be at even better if I'm at the center of it, and to find out that I actually, and to find out that I actually also belong when I'm not participating, or when I'm not doing, or when I'm just passive.
Yeah, not doing as opposed to not participating, because you are participating because you're there.
Exactly.
But you're not in you're not in a physical doing. Yeah, but to get that sense of like, I'm still a part of this. Yeah. Where is it? I saw a lovely thing, I think it was earlier this year, or it's just a message that was sent to a contact group that had all left an event. And I think it is a quote from a contact practitioner, maybe it's Nancy, that is, you are always in. And if you feel yourself as being in, you are always in. So you're always in the jam, you're always in the space, you're always in the something. And we put it, I did a nice event in China earlier this year, and we just put it on the edge of the jam. And I think it really helped me anyway, just to remember that even if you pop down the stairs, leave the jam, go for a wee, have a cup of tea, have a chat with somebody, and then come back, all of that, you're always in because the jam's on. And if you feel like you're always in and you're connected to it, that's part of your dance. And I really like that. It's it brings you more into the flow of life, and that everything, if you view everything in that way, everything becomes a creative act, and well, life becomes a little bit sweeter, maybe.
Yeah, and you're always part, no matter what you're doing. You're just at that specific moment doing the part of doing that. It's beautiful. But there's so many layers, right? Like why people should do contact.
Yeah. I guess I want to find. I'm discussing at the moment. Or when I say discussing, I'm discussing internally with me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
About how to communicate more clearly why contact is so good, and why everybody should try it, especially with me, because I'm really good at it. But why people should try it in a way that is approachable and safe, so that they can really find this connection to themselves and how to connect to other people with this joyful, playful lightness, which it makes connecting to other people so much easier. And I think in a world where we're touch starved and we're also increasingly more socially anxious, I think most of my friends are like, "Oh, I don't want to go and meet lots of people. I'm quite socially anxious." So it's really hard to talk to people. You can remove that and not talk to someone, but meet them. I find meeting new people is easiest in contact jams. It just takes everything away, because I don't have to think up some bullshit conversation. I don't have to ask you about your life or anything. I can just meet your body. And then if I've danced with somebody for, I don't know, 20 minutes, you really feel like you get to know someone. And then if you talk to them afterwards, it's actually quite easy to have a conversation. Because you've got something to talk about, which is the dance you just had, and like see how it was for both of you. And then you've got a shared commonality, and then the questions unfold and the interest in each other unfolds, because you already know you're interested, because you invested a bit of your shared time to move together. And it literally breaks down social barriers very quickly. But I think that's also maybe why people are really scared of it. Like, I meet a lot of people who are scared of contact. Like, "Oh no, I don't like touching people." It's like, why don't you like touching people? What's wrong with you? Sorry.
But don't you think that? But don't you think that a bit of the conscious hippie bubble is also like
to blame?
Something that to blame. Yeah, it's just something that some people just don't want to be involved with.
Yeah, I do. I'm. I was quite a big hippie, and I am still a big hippie at heart. There's a wonderful English musician. He's called the Undercover Hippie, and he's very good. I'm a bit of an undercover hippie now, I guess, because I don't look like one anymore, but I am. But yeah, for me, I find that, I guess I understand what you asked, like that people don't want to be involved in that sort of that uber hippie spiritual community that's all love and light and connection. And I understand that, and it's maybe something quite off-putting, but it's funny how contact sort of becomes synonymous or entangled in the spiritual community, because actually contact, when it began, was punk. Contact was a very, if you're looking at what it's most related to, it's fucking punk, man. It's like, it's anarchistic. It's like, these are the rules. No, I'm doing something else. It's not free love and everybody's connected and everybody's, it's more like, hey, let's be fucking anarchistic about this. Let's break shit. Let's break the rules and break it down and find something else out of that. Let's find something real. And it's Malcolm Manning who said it was punk. He's a good friend of mine, but is a longer term practitioner than me. He danced with Nancy and the underscore and things. But he's like, contact's fucking punk, man, and I agree with him on that, because it is. So yeah. But how does it? When something begins to attract a lot of a certain type of people, and there's nothing wrong with the spiritual hippie community. It's just they get a bad rep from being a bit too much like love and light and everything, which is also kind of weird, isn't it? Because they're all positive things, and then it gets it's like, oh God, stop being so positive about the world. But then I'm equally cynical about them, so I'm just being cynical right now. So I'm being a hypocritical twat, basically. But yeah,
I'm not saying that has to be a problem. I'm just saying that other people might not want that.
Yeah, it can be off-putting, can't it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for other people.
For others.
I am.
But it is, it is difficult to get people to the practice. I understand that contact is incredibly niche.
Yeah.
But when I talk about it and I make a bit of sense about it to people who are interested, because sometimes I can make sense about it and sometimes I cannot. When I do and it's engaging, people are like, wow, that does sound really interesting actually. But then those people might come to a jam and be like, oh, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But then I think anybody who's never done contact shouldn't be allowed to go to a contact jam without doing a class. But that's
I would highly recommend going to a class first, a beginner's class.
A beginner's class, because if you don't know the language, if you don't know what you're doing, how can you expect to speak the language in a space where everybody already knows how to speak it? It's
or even understand what's being talked about.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think something I did want to talk about, why I'm not so into like the sex positive scene being involved in contact for me. I'd quite like to talk a moment about that.
Yes, please.
One, and obviously you mentioned you went to a contact thing and it was sort of an excuse for everybody to rub each other. And I find for me, one of the things I find really powerful about contact spaces is actually the opposite of that, is that it's desexualization of touch. So that's why I'm very clear in my spaces that this is what it's not, is we're not exploring the sexual side to sensuality, where like sensuality in the terms of I can sense things deeply is allowed, but sensuality in the terms as it's known, which is sexuality is put on that word. So something sensual, you instantly assume it's sexual, but it's actually it's a very different thing. And so the sensuality in terms of being deeply aware of what you're sensing is very much encouraged. But when it turns towards, that sort of romantic or connecting with that intent behind it of like, I'm going towards something I want and it's romantic. Obviously, you can't suddenly make it go away. It's just we don't direct our attention towards that happening, and we direct our attention to moving with it. So there might be feelings of interest or romantic feelings, but it's like, how can I, in this space, focus my attention on my dance practice and on my movement practice? Because bringing a lot of touch with a group of people, it does a wonderful thing of like settling the collective nervous system when you remove that sexuality. I'm not involved in any of the sort of that side of things, so I can't talk about that, and I know it's important and that's what other people are choosing to do. But I find this platonic touch when it's in a group creates this like this sense of community more than I felt in other spaces, where it's like you really get this sense of togetherness. And we are living in a society that is hypersexed, and everything is sex, and everybody's trying to make themselves look sexy and change their bodies to look like the ideal partner or the sexual ideal of what a man or a woman or a person is supposed to look like. And for me, this like just coming and being together in touch and dropping all of that is like a sort of counter movement against the hypersexualization of our society. Of like, let's just be together and feel how important this exchange of touch is, and letting that be enough. And there's so much in a hug. There's so much in lying together with a group of people after you've danced a lot and you're quite tired, and you just lie there and just be together, like how like puppies fall asleep, or how like dogs fall asleep together, or like other mammals group together to rest, and it's very natural. And so these group restings I find for myself really pleasurable in the sensual nature of removing the sexuality. And I think it's so important for us as humans to not see every single touch as a potential romantic sexual encounter, but like
Yeah.
And understanding that this touch itself is really, really important for us because we are tactile, touch-based humans who have been removed from that superpower that we have.
Yeah. Amen.
Testify.
Amen. We recently had a brief conversation about teaching, and I want to pick up on that because it was very interesting. And you said that you started teaching pretty quickly after you started dancing. That your dance teacher had you teach the little kids.
Exactly. Yes, she utilized this very well.
Yeah.
It just makes sense as well. Yeah.
and then also after graduating, I think you fairly quickly taught classes, and that you then caught yourself doing the same mistakes your teachers did.
Yes.
It's probably not avoidable. Like, you can't avoid it.
No.
When you start out, that you kind of shit at it and that you do embarrassing things without questioning them until you do, and then you become better. And I was curious about like hearing a little more about this. Also, maybe what you discovered was bullshit that you accidentally copied, that you then dropped.
Yes. Yeah, I'd say stereotypically in dance training, especially sort of the ballet, contemporary dance world. So I didn't go to classical ballet, so I didn't experience that. So I was in contemporary dance, and the sort of stereotypical approach seemed to be very authoritarian and very mean, for want of a better word. There's quite often this, like, the thing, and I guess it's sort of more old school teaching methods of putting people on the spot to make them feel dumb and like, sort of, and what's the answer then? And pointing out when people are doing things wrong and highlighting the negative and not praising the positive so much. So sort of more of a focus on negative and more of a focus on and now you need to go there. Like, if you do achieve the thing, it's like, right, and that thing that was good enough is now not good enough, and now you need to do the next thing. So this thing of, which I understand, it's that striving mindset. So we sort of, I was trained through that striving mindset of you're never quite good enough, and you must always be looking ahead of you, and you must be better. There's also a very strong push, and in the school especially, to change your body. You must change. You are not good enough the way you are right now. You need to change the shape of your physical body, which isn't actually possible. You can't change your skeleton. You can't change the muscles you've got. You can train them, and you can grow, and you learn lots of things, but you can't change your physiology. And they were bullying people to change their physiology. Like, I was lucky that I had quite a strong athletic build as a man, but they tried to get the people with who were a bit softer and rounder to skin down. They tried to get the skinny people to get bigger. They tried to get some of the girls with larger hips to not have larger hips. And you're like, what are you doing? Anyway, I've got off topic. This toxic space of trying to change people, that it's not just not a healthy thing to do.
I always was suspicious of some of my acting teachers. I had acting teachers that were felt like they had a calling to be a teacher. They were great, and they were kind, and they were fun. And then there were others where I felt like, you're not called to being a teacher, you're just a bad actor, and this is how you ended up here. Like, you couldn't have money. Not a bad actor, but you didn't have a successful career as an actor. Is something very different. I take that back. They were not bad actors. They didn't have a successful career, or not anymore. And what was left for them was to turn to teaching.
Yeah.
So of course they were bitter, and they were judgmental, and they
that
were
gets put
envious,
onto the students.
and and then they like to take young, hopeful students apart.
Crush their souls.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got quite off topic of the question there because I got a bit negative about the school, which happens sometimes. But I'm gonna come back to maybe this doesn't make it in. I'll come back to talking about my teaching. So
yeah, but it informed it, even if it informed you to what not to do. Right?
It did inform it, yeah. But the thing is, I started doing that, So what the monkey see, monkey do when you start teaching, and you're sort of you've experienced a lot of that negativity, so you feel like you owe it to people to pay it forward in the negative way of like, well, this is the way I was treated, so it's the way that people are educated, so it's the way that I have to be. So you start being, when you are suddenly the power in the room and you have the opportunity to make other people feel like you felt, you do it. And I don't have any memory of me being especially mean, but I could be very loud. I am very loud, and I was quite shouty and like really, really pushing people and driving them very, very hard. And a bit too hard, and a bit like, come on guys, this isn't enough. You need to go further. You need to go faster. And I think I just sort of started to notice that I sort of questioned myself. I was like, you never enjoyed feeling like that. So they're not going to enjoy feeling like that. And why are you being like that? Why don't you start behaving like you wish somebody had behaved towards you? And then something sort of switched in me of like, I can just be nice to them. I can be nice to myself. And this opens up a whole different space of learning. And we create a positive learning atmosphere where you lift people up with what they are doing really well, and you encourage that. And if they're not doing well, you open spaces where they can direct their learning as opposed to pointing out that they're not doing well. So that sort of shifted for me more when I was doing youth dance. So I was performing and teaching at the same time, and I was sort of switching between projects. And when I was doing that, I learned more about how to encourage teenagers. I think that was really, really important, of like lifting people up with their dance and being like, hey, this is amazing, why don't you do this more? And like coming up, seeing how the groups naturally worked and coming up with choreography or movements or things that really supported them and helped them look good on stage and things like that. So it shifted in me of like, I don't want to be treating people like this because it never felt nice to me. And I can extend this forward, and then that's grown in my teaching practice. And the main thing that really shifted my teaching practice was the thing that we haven't touched on yet, which is this acronym of TMW, which is Tai Chi Movements for Wellbeing. And it's I did a classic teacher training, but I did a teacher training course in this very simple but very powerful form. And Tai Chi Movements for Wellbeing is the distilled essence of Tai Chi and Qigong, and the principles that underpin these deep Eastern philosophical mystical practices. And it's basically this condensed, distilled form into a short 16-move sequence that's very accessible for a Western mind. So this format and sequence was created by a Tai Chi master called Richard Farmer, and him and his partner Marigold and some other people, they present this form in England. And I went to learn this, and what struck me from the first weekend was their teaching methods, how they communicate the sequence to you, but then through that, once we'd learned the sequence, how they invite you to share it with others. And the key for me with that was that they have this phrase of you invite people to join you on the carpet. So if you're sitting at home and you open the door to invite people in, you're sitting there on the rug with a nice cup of tea, and you invite them to come and sit down and join you. And you roll out the carpet to your participants, even if you turned away from them. So even with your back, you're whatever you're doing in this space, you give off this invitation of like, hey, let's do this together. And it completely transformed my teaching practice, because you basically the actuality of that nice phrase is you never point out when somebody's wrong. You never put anybody on the spot. You never ask them a question where they need to remember something, because whenever anybody does that, you go, even if you know the answer. I hate it when people do that. And you offer explorations with a specific limit so they can find it themselves. And you always give positive affirmation. And so that approach is completely in how I teach anything I teach now, even if it's I'm doing floor work or contact or TMW itself, or even if I'm helping somebody learn something small. It's just like you do that, it's why people say I'm a good teacher. And you have infinite patience as well, as it gives you the patience because you're connected to yourself, you're connected to your breath, your body, and from that place you can see when they're not getting it and when they are getting it. And you can also feel that if you say, oh no, you're not doing that, it's like, oh fuck, and you watch it change in the person, like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. And so that, and that comes back to play actually, because when you feel safe, you learn. You feel safe when you're playing. That's why you learn better. And when you're in a space where somebody's holding you with that care and a level of care and attention of like, this is your learning space and I am holding it for you to feel safe so that you can learn to the best of your ability. Those are really nourishing learning spaces to be in. And that's, I love going to spaces like that as well. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so curious I also want to learn that.
Yeah, it's great. You should. It's in February. Go to England. Yeah, I just did. So we have regular CPD. Is it CPD or CDP? Continuous Professional Development, CPD. And ever since COVID, it's gone online because everybody's spread all over England. They've kept it that way. But it means I could do my CPD here, and I did it last week actually. And every time we do another CPD, especially when it's Marigold, she is just an absolute magician of a woman. As soon as she holds the space and people arrive, you just feel at home, and you genuinely feel so welcomed and appreciated and cared for. And it's like, yeah, the people, so like with her and the other person, Andrea, who are holding it, whenever you'd be there in the physical space, like you genuinely feel like I belong here and these people really, really care about me. And feeling that through a screen with 20 other people, and you're like, and you still feel it. You're like, God, it's just great.
There is a technique to it. Like,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
Fascinating.
Just be a fucking nice person. No, to genuinely care, be present, be there, and be aware of what you're doing and what you're holding, and hold it with the sacredness that it is. Somebody's giving you all of their trust to communicate something that you really care about, and your trust is they've got all of their trust in your hands. So you have a huge obligation to meet that.
Absolutely. And it is a training how to teach, or do you just learn how to teach the Tai Chi movements?
So specifically that sequence, you learn how to teach that sequence, but because that sequence helps you learn how to be with yourself in everyday life, it teaches you how to teach people how to cope with life. And it's presence and awareness, releasing and dropping and relaxing into the flow of life and engaging and meeting life where you are right now, and always checking in with where you are right now, and to move outwards and meet the world with awareness of how you are and engage with the world, and let that feed back into you. So it's, there's a fourth principle I can't name right now, but it's sort of, it's that in its essence. And because they do that because it's very simple, it can be applied to anything. And so that's why it's really, really helped my, applying it to improvisation especially, it's really helped my forming of those spaces. Because I was sort of coming into contact, not really knowing what I'm doing. I started teaching contact in collaboration with Vega, and I would teach the like solo stuff. I would teach this, which I knew. I would teach the rolling around or the sort of solo improvisation, and Vega would always teach the contact exercises because I was new to the practice, but we had this really good combination where I brought a lot of structure and form from contemporary dance, and she brought a lot of the contact knowledge. And then over 10 years, our skills just blended, and I learned how to teach contact through teaching contact, which a couple of people when I first started were like, you shouldn't really be doing that, you're a bit... But, I wasn't fully doing it. I had a support who really knew what they were doing. And I only started teaching contact on my own after about 3 or 4 years when I really felt comfortable that I could do that. But I was very lucky to have, that collaborative support and grow with another teacher, really grow in collaboration and connection. So the TMW, it's always with me in my teaching. Whenever I refer back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's always there.
Oh, it sounds so beautiful. Yeah, and when you described it, I was really like, yeah, I recognize that. That is how you teach. That's amazing. Very inspiring. I have another rant on the tip of my tongue with like this, how many people never train to be teachers and just start teaching, which is obviously okay. I mean, you can teach out of your own experience of being taught, but to also have the humility to still have a mentor and to be guided and to be mentored into that and grow into it, and just to be clear that you're gonna be shit in the beginning and that this is okay, and just make as many mistakes as quickly as you can, basically.
Yeah,
so you've done them. And but yeah, how wonderful to also be trained in how to teach.
And I've learned so much about what I'm actually doing when I'm moving by breaking it down. And one reason that I'm very good in especially like the floor work stuff where you're looking at direct specific techniques is that I will absolutely geek out on exactly what is happening. So I will break it down and break it down and break it down into smaller and smaller pieces. So if I present something and people, it's not quite going in, I'm like, okay, well, it's up to me to break it down so it's digestible, literally. So, but over the years, it's helped me make things more communicable, because I'm like, this at this level, it can only go in for people that have already had 3 years of training. If I want to teach this move, I can do it to people with less training over a much slower, longer period of time, and they can learn it. I just have to break it down more. It's still achievable. So knowing your audience and learning all those mistakes, and then going, how can I communicate as clearly as possible what is going on in every moment? And then people can learn it, and I love doing that. And it's it's helped me learn more about my own body as well. So I think you've got to be a real geek about what you're doing, and also really care about the fact that you want other people to get it.
Yeah.
And that you've got the patience to help them get it. So you have to be really, really patient, because sometimes it just doesn't go in. And then if the people it's not going in for are faced with, why aren't you getting it from the teacher? Suddenly it's on them. And you're and it's pretty old school teaching, isn't it? Like you should have it by now. Why aren't you guys learning this by now? And it's just not good teaching. It's like, you should have figured out why they haven't got it yet, and you should be breaking it down more to help them. You're the fucking teacher. But it's a whole skill exactly in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, like you said, you need to love two things. You need to love the thing itself, and really need to want to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And you need to love the teaching, and it's a different
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And only then should you be teaching.
Yes. Yes. But you've got to teach to get and make all those mistakes and get to that place as well. So it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah,
But that's what teacher trainings are for, I guess. Yeah, and I guess one day I'm really keen to teach a teacher training, but I don't think I'm there yet or ready to do that. And it's such a triggering word for people, and especially in the contact world, because as soon as you present something as a teacher training, everybody gets triggered and goes, "Oh, you shouldn't be telling people what to do with contact." But there are communicable skills in teaching, as we just discussed. So I think it is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how you present it, and I wouldn't dare to present it for quite a few years until I'm really distilling and clarifying those teaching methods for myself. And the next step is to deliver a more extended training for myself in contact, give like a year-long program and start to really develop and hone that as a
the timing of
syllabus
these
itself.
things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Becoming a senior.
Yeah.
So you need to get way older for that.
Yeah, I need to get way more experience as well. I need to keep dancing to do that.
Yeah,
so that's good.
Not just
that.
getting older. Not just getting older. Also more experience. That's the more important part.
Wiser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did train in body work. I've seen it. I've been there.
You were there.
I was there for it. I was there when
we were
it
roomies.
happened. Yeah, you
It was the cementing of our friendship, actually.
It's true. We shared a room in Portugal.
Yeah.
When I was assisting in your training.
Exactly.
And you trained with Sophie
and you touched
as well.
my scar and made me cry.
That's true. A physical scar for the people who don't know. It's a physical scar.
And consensually for the people who don't.
Yeah. It was a good cry. How does that influence your work now, or has changed maybe your contact practice as well?
So the training for me put me more deeply in touch with myself, and I went through a very deep personal process through the training of also having like a slight personal breakdown and a semi-deep depression, and then a spiraling out the other side of that. And so a lot of transformation happens throughout my training, which is good because it's called transformational bodywork. I got very more in touch with my sadness, which is more important to get then in touch with my connection to life and movement and dance and like life force flowing through dance. But the awareness about how to touch through the training and how powerful even the smallest, simplest touches, or even not touching and being in close proximity to bodies and working in that way with breath and awareness, how much can happen in all of these different realms, brought more awareness to what we're doing in contact spaces and why people can be really, really overwhelmed. So it's brought more awareness to me to simplify, because so much is happening with touch. But also what it's done, a lot of bodywork exchange happens in contact. You know, there's always like bodywork happening the size of a jam, or like people have injuries and people want holding, or that. So that's like contact and bodywork already sort of sit together a lot, and it's always in the space. So having a much deeper knowledge of giving bodywork has brought me to a space now when I'm on longer events, I offer a bodywork workshop where I give some of the very basic tools that work for me in the contact realm of like how to exchange, how to hold a clear space when you're giving work, body work, how to listen through your hands through the rest of your body, and pay attention through your breath and pay attention to a partner. So those the tools that I gained in my training. I offer in a group session, and often in contact improvisation workshops, we also have like an exercise where it's body work, and I'm much more able to communicate, and there's a more depth to those exercises or those specific bodywork workshops from that. But one thing also the training has done is that it's deepened my awareness and perception of what's happening in spaces, and it's also put me more in touch with my ability to listen to other people and what's going on for them, and hold space for people when they're having more difficulty. And I guess it's brought me into a deeper presence, basically. So if something challenging comes up for somebody, I have more capacity to deal for it. And stuff does come up, like we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. And I used to feel like if something came up, I'd be like, I'm just, yeah. And I would sort of hold my breath and be like, fuck, how can I help this person? And now I realize, it's not my job to help this person, but I can listen. And how I can help them is by being fully present and there. There's been quite a lot of layers to my expanded capacity as a facilitator and a space holder and a human that cares with my body work, which is just permeating throughout my work, much like the TMW did to my teaching practice. The body work it's also brought more awareness to how I dance. So it's really sort of expanded through my creative practice to find more depth and like more joy and more pleasure. Like there's more ability to access those deeper realms of sensitivity and sensation of what's going on within us, which you're nodding and agreeing because you do it and live it and work it yourself and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's not change the game, but put it in
enhanced
HD.
the game.
Enhanced, exactly.
So, and it makes you fall in love with depth and intensity in a way, right? Like it takes away the fear of it, and makes you crave it more. It's like, can we have more depth? Can we have more intensity?
Exactly. And it's actually this depth and this intensity and this deeper connection to feeling alive that's brought me through my really low times and brought me into engaging more with life and getting out there and doing something with it again, having the capacity and the will and the drive to engage with life again is the intensity and the depth, for sure.
Yeah. Wonderful. So beautiful.
Which is nice.
Mm-hmm. So what's gonna happen in the next month? Where can people learn from you?
Where can you find Human Moves next? Where can you dance with me? I will be hosting with Vega and our collaborator Volker Eschmann. We will be hosting a New Year Jam celebration from the 29th of December to the 1st of January, and we're having a big contact New Year's celebration with workshops and jams, and there's even an opportunity to go and dance in water jam at Liquid One. Yeah, amazing. Contact in water is next level. It's so awesome. And so we'll be doing that. And that's at Motions in Gleisdreieck. And this is all on my website called humanmoves.com. I realize it's hard to say because it's my name, Hugh, H-U-T-H, man moves. I didn't think it through in the telling other people about it. I just like the pun. Anyway.
Yeah, it's great. I'm going to put it in the show notes. So
put it in the show notes.
Click it.
Find it at the bottom of the show notes. Follow me on Instagram. And then, very luckily, over winter, I've been invited to Brazil to share my work in Bahia. And looks like I'm going to teach in Brazil until the end of winter. And then we'll see. Hopefully, need to organize my spring. It's not so organized yet. We're doing something in Portugal in spring. CI spring residency with myself and Vega and Rick Nodine, who is a fantastic practitioner, American guy based in London. And we're trying a new project together where we're offering 2-week training in contact, somatics, and performance practices. So when we say performance, we really mean like about presence. So it's not so much about the performing, doing a show, but more about showing up in space. Really, what is it to see and be seen and show up for yourself and for others? So that's sort of what we mean by performance. So that's in the end of April.
Delicious.
So there's
there
that's
you
where
go.
You can catch me next.
Locally, European and international.
And international, yeah. But I'm not doing anything right now. Right now, I'm just sitting in my room and trying to avoid doing my tax return. Which is looming ever closer. The avoidance techniques are not working anymore.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. You want me to come over and kick your ass?
Yes, please. Maybe next week.
Okay.
Once I've engaged with it a bit and I've got overwhelmed, I'll cook you dinner.
Okay, I'll be there.
I'll give you dinner and give you a bodywork. Can you come and help with my tax?
Yes. Cool.
Yes. That better make the
Let's make it bait. Thank you so much for taking
Did it do a good job?
Oh, I think you did a great job.
I'm a dog. I need to be told I'm a good boy.
Yeah, you're a good boy.
You're a good boy. I sounded clever and like a proper practitioner.
Did you have fun?
I did. I had loads of fun. I'm sweating from lots of places because I got all excited and passionate, and I've been rocking back and forth on my chair like an autistic child. And no, I really enjoyed that a lot. Thank you. It's great.
Thank you.
Wow, I can get really passionate about dance, huh? And touch.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. I hope you feel inspired to try out a contact class if you haven't yet. And in any way, try to do one with Hugh. I can't recommend enough. And maybe I'll see you there. Yeah, and all in all, thank you so much for listening to this podcast as this year of 2024 comes to an end. I know some of you have really been along for the whole journey and are probably happy that another episode is coming out. This has been a longer one, maybe for a train ride home for Christmas. So I hope you are well, and I'm wishing you all the best for the transition into the next year. And I also will be back with more episodes that yet want to be recorded. And if you feel like giving me a little Christmas gift or giving back a little bit, I now have a PayPal me link where you could send me a little donation. It's paypal.me/AlfKatharina. So that's ALFKATHARINA, my name. And maybe something like €1 per episode, something like that. Just a little coffee. This really is a lot of work, I can tell you. Like, an episode takes me a couple of days to edit and design all the graphics and put it out there and get it on its way to you. So, yeah, I'd appreciate that a lot. And in any way, have a happy Christmas and a happy New Year. And hopefully see you soon. Bye.